Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says the errors can become stepping stones. The blind gropings can be changed in conquest. With my love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Divine Mother, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother. Some answers from Volume 16, Series 8. Some answers by our Divine Mother, page 223. Question, Sweet Mother, what is the difference between the psychic change and the spiritual change? For this, our Divine Mother says, the psychic change is the change that puts you in contact with the immanent divine, the divine who's at the center of each being and of whom the psychic being is the sheath and the expression. By the psychic change, one passes from the individual divine to the universal divine, and finally to the transcendent. The spiritual change puts you directly in contact with the Supreme. Date 9th September 1959. Question, Sweet Mother, how can one make one's psychic personality grow? For this, our Divine Mother says, it is through all the experiences of life that the psychic personality grows, first forms, grows, and develops, finally becomes a complete, conscious, and free being. This process of development goes on tirelessly through innumerable lives, and if one is not conscious of it, it is because one is not conscious of one's psychic being, for that is the indispensable starting point. Through interiorization and concentration, one has to enter into conscious contact with one's psychic being. This psychic being always has an influence on the outer being, but that influence is almost always occult, neither seen nor perceived nor felt, save on truly exceptional occasions. Our Divine Mother says, in order to strengthen the contact and aid, and if possible, the development of the conscious psychic personality, one should, while concentrating, turn towards it, aspire to know it and feel it, open oneself to receive its influence, and take great care each time that one receives an indication from it to follow it very scrupulously and sincerely. To live in a great aspiration, to take care to become inwardly calm and remain so always as far as possible, to cultivate a perfect sincerity in all the activities of one's being, these are the essential conditions for the growth of the psychic being. 10th September 1959. Question, Sweet Mother, how can one draw energy into oneself from outside? For this, our Divine Mother says, that depends on the kind of energy one wants to absorb, for each region of the being has a corresponding kind of energy. If it is physical energy, we absorb it principally through respiration, and all that facilitates and improves respiration increases at the same time the absorption of physical energy. But there are other kinds of energies, rather, many other forms of energy, which is one and universal. And it is through the various yogic exercises of breathing, meditation, japa, and concentration that one pulls or puts oneself in contact with these various forms of energies. Question, sweet mother. What are these other forms of energy and how do they help us in our sadhana? For this, our Divine Mother says each region of the being and activity has its energies. We may classify them generally into vital energies, mental, and spiritual energies. Modern science tells us that matter is ultimately nothing but energy condensed. Our yoga being integral, our yoga being integral, all these various kinds or forms of energy are indispensable to our realization. Question, sweet mother, what is meant by a subtle physical prolongation of the superficial form of the mental envelope? For this, our Divine Mother says, it means that the ghost one sees and wrongly takes for the departed being itself, it is only an image of it, an imprint, like a photographic imprint, left in the subtle physical by the superficial mental form, an image that can become visible under certain conditions. Question, sweet mother, how can one silence the mind, remain quiet, and at the same time have an aspiration, an intensity, or a widening? Because as soon as one aspires, isn't the mind that aspires?
Ne cesse pas de tendre vers la perfection.
For this, our Divine Mother says no. Aspiration as well as widening and intensity comes from the heart, the emotional center, the door of the psychic, or rather the door leading to the psychic. The mind, by its nature, is curious and interested. It sees and absorbs. It sees and observes, it tries to understand and explain, and with all these activities, it disturbs the experience and diminishes its intensity and force. On the other hand, the more quiet and silent the mind is, the more can aspiration rise up from the depths of the heart in the fullness of its ardor. Question, sweet mother, how can one eliminate the will of the ego? For this, our Divine Mother says, this amounts to asking how can one eliminate the ego? It is only by yoga that one can do it. There have been, throughout the spiritual history of humanity, many methods of yoga which Sri Aurobindo has described and explained for us in the synthesis of yoga. But before eliminating the will of the ego, which takes a very long time, one can begin by surrendering the will of the ego to the divine will at every opportunity and finally in a constant way. For this, the first step is to understand that the divine knows better then we what is good for us and what we truly need, and not only for our spiritual progress but also for our material well-being, the health of our body, and the proper functioning of all the activities of our being. Let me repeat this. Our Divine Mother says, before eliminating the will of the ego, which takes a very long time, one can begin by surrendering the will of the ego to the divine will at every opportunity, and finally in a constant way. For this, the first step is to understand that the divine knows better than we what is good for us and what we truly need, not only for our spiritual progress, but also for our material well being, the health of our body, and the proper functioning of all the activities of our being. Naturally, this is not the opinion of the ego, which thinks it knows better than anyone else what it needs and claims for itself independence of judgment and decision. But it thinks and feels this way because it is ignorant, and gradually one has to convince it that its perception and understanding are too limited for it truly to be able to know, and that it judges only according to its desires, which are blind, and not according to the truth. For the desires are not the expression of the needs but of preferences, says our Divine Mother, dated 19 September 1959. Question, sweet Mother, why has the Divine made his path so difficult? He can make it easier if he wants, can't he? For this, our Divine Mother says, first of all, one should know that the intellect, the mind, can understand nothing of the divine, neither what he knows or does, nor how he does it, and still less why he does it. To know something of the divine, one has to rise above thought and enter into the psychic consciousness, the consciousness of the soul, or into the spiritual consciousness. Those who have had the experience have always said that the difficulties and the sufferings of the path are not real but a creation of human ignorance, and that as soon as one gets out of this ignorance, one also gets out of the difficulties, to say nothing of the inalienable state of bliss in which one dwells as soon as one is in conscious with the divine. So, according to them, the question has no real basis and cannot be posed. Date 21st September 1959. Question, sweet Mother, you have written that to enter into conscious contact with one's psychic being, one must aspire to know it and feel it, open oneself to receive its influence, and take great care to follow it very scrupulously and sincerely. But, sweet Mother, I do not know how to do this. I find it easier when I think of you, try to enter into contact with you and open to you. For this, our Divine Mother says, this too is a way which is certainly as good as the other. There are many ways to attain self realization, and each one must choose the way that comes to him most naturally. But each way has its demands in order to be truly effective. In thinking of me, you must think not only of the outer person, but of what she represents, what she stands behind her. For you must never forget that the outer person is only the form and symbol of an eternal reality, and through the physical appearance, it is to this higher reality that you must turn. The physical being cannot become truly expressive of the eternal reality until it is completely transformed by the supramental manifestation. And until then, it is through it that you must find the truth, says our Divine Mother, date 22nd September 1959. Question, sweet mother, what is the role of the soul? For this, our Divine Mother says, but without the soul, we don't exist. We won't exist. The soul, says our Divine Mother, is that which comes from the Divine without ever leaving Him and returns to the Divine without ceasing to be manifest. Let me repeat. Our Divine Mother says the soul is that which comes from the Divine without ever leaving Him and returns to the Divine without ceasing to be manifest. The soul is the Divine, made individual without ceasing to be divine. In the soul, the individual and the divine are eternally one. Therefore, to find one's soul is to find God. To identify with one's soul is to unite with the divine. Thus, it may be said that the role of the soul is to make a true being of man. Date 29 September 1959. Question, sweet mother, is there anything like good luck and bad luck, or is it something that one creates for oneself? For this, our Divine Mother says there is nothing that can truly be called luck. What men call luck are the effects of causes they do not know. Nor is there anything that in itself is good or bad. Each one characterizes circumstances as good or bad depending on whether they are more or less favorable to him, and this estimation itself is very superficial and ignorant, for one must already be a great sage to know what is truly favorable or unfavorable to oneself. Moreover, the same event may be very good for one person at the same time very bad for another. These estimations are purely subjective and depend on each one's reaction to contacts coming from outside. Finally, the circumstances of our life, the surroundings in which we live, and the way in which people regard us are the expression, the objective projection of what we ourselves are within and without. So, we may say with certainty that what we carry in ourselves, in all our states of being, mental, vital, and physically, is that which constitutes our life objectified in what surrounds us. And this is easily variable, for in proportion for this is easily verifiable, for in proportion as we improve ourselves and advance towards perfection, our circumstances also improve. Likewise, in the case of those who degenerate and fall back, the circumstances of their lives also worsen, says our Divine Mother, date 5th October 1959, to be continued.